Hi everybody, welcome to Dynamo Sword Channel. I'm David, and today on Dynamo Sword Channel I will be reviewing the Windlass Espada Ropera. So how does the sword fare among other rapier in its price range, as well as hold up to the historical types that it's based on? Well, stay tuned, we'll find out. So this sword classifies as a rapier. Now the rapier was developed in the 16th century, and its design was an evolutionary change to the single-handed sword, which was known as the arming sword of the earlier medieval period. Now, the three major changes seen in the rapier were a thinning of the blade profile, focusing on thrusting over cutting. The second would be adding a significant length to the blade to focus on, general range and reach. And then finally, specialized, intricate hilting with, a bigger focus on hand protection. Now, the rapier was developed at a time when warfare was going through more evolutionary advancements as well. Firearms and ballistics were becoming more common, and eliminating the use of heavy armor and, shields that were more prominently used in previous centuries. In general, the rapier can be categorized into two main types. The first type would be the military, and then the second type would be, as seen here, the civilian rapier. Now, the primary differences were, in blade profile, with the military rapier being more akin to the earlier side sword of the late 15th century, featuring a broader blade and also a shorter blade that favored more battle-focused functionality, being more cut and thrust swords. Now, the civilian rapier focused more on the thrust rather than being a battlefield weapon. It was, really a more focused on dueling and being a dueling weapon for the civilian. Its thin, long blade gave more finesse and reach to the user, and helped kind of keep that distance between opponents, while its intricate hilting added extra hand protection to kind of help the user, so a buckler or a shield wasn't needed to be used. Now, the focus of the civilian rapier to the civilian user also kind of added to the gravity of its carry and prestige, with many rapier having very attractive and glamorous hilts to show its owner's wealth and rank. The rapier itself is classified less on its blade types like previous medieval European swords, and more so on the hilt types, specifically in design and also on regional differences, as the style and amount of hilting, the style and amount of hilting the sword had. Now, this sword would be what would be classified as a full hilt rapier. Now, what classifies it as a full hilt is its full swept basket, its two full quillions, the knuckle guard, and of course the ringlets. Now, regionally, this sword features the popular Italian three-ring hilt configuration. Now, this hilt type differentiates itself from basically by having what its name implies, featuring the three rings on the upper portion of the guard. Now, as mentioned earlier, this is a prime example of a 16th to 17th century civilian rapier with an Italian-styled hilt. Now, the rapier was very popular in Italy, and this sword type would have been seen throughout the time period mentioned prominently. One thing to point out, though, is the sword's name kind of contradicts its styling. The term Espada Ropera is actually a Spanish term for the civilian rapier. I mean, even in Windlass's description, they claim the sword is to be a replica of a Spanish rapier. Now, there's nothing to say that a Spaniard would or could use a rapier from or a rapier hilt style from another region or country, but I would still say overall it would be odd at the time to see this regularly, as most rapier types were set to their region of use. Some other examples of regional types would be the German Pappenheimer, the Spanish types, the Bilbo, and the more Spanish-centric cup hilt. And again, as this was the Italian type with the 3 rings, and then there was also the English Saxon hilt. Now, being based on a popular type, this specific sword isn't necessarily a direct replica of any historical sword, but we do see many 3-ring types in collections and museums. For example, this one here, which is a 17th century original. So in closing, the rapier is definitely an immaculate weapon, and one that shows a true defining evolution of the sword in post-Renaissance Europe. Considered the aristocrat's or gentleman's weapon in design and focus, and shows a significant change to what defined a sword and also who were allowed to carry them. I mean, no longer was the sword designated to the knight or noble. The rapier was definitely the sword of the common man, and also a sign of wealth and importance in the 16th and 17th centuries. Now let's look at the overall statistics of this sword. So its overall length is 44 inches. It has a weight at 2.5 pounds with a point of balance right at 3 inches from the hilt. Now the center of percussion is right at about 23 inches from the hilt. And again, this sword's class is what would be known as a civilian rapier. So the blade's total length, and that's from the quillions to the tip, is 37 3/4 inches. The blade width is right at about 7/8 of an inch, and then that sharply tapers to about a 1/4 inch at the tip. The material is a 1065 high carbon steel, and the finish is a mirror finish with a blued or blackened stonewash finish. The cross section on this blade is diamond, and again, the blade type would fall in line to what would be classified as a rapier or civilian rapier blade. Now the guard's total length is, or quillion length, is 9 3/8 inches. The quillion dimensions are 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch and down here, and then they swell up to 3/8 by 3/8, and as you can see, they're squared. Now the inclusion in the center is 5/8 inch by 1/2 inch, and that kind of swells to more 5/8 of an inch right here at the ring guards. Now, the cup or basket dimensions is 16 inches around, give or take, and the D cup is about or guard is right, I would say with the length, it's about 5 inches, and then its inner width from the hilt to give you like your knuckle space is about 2 3/4 inches. Now the ring guards are 1 5/8 wide for finger space, and its length down to the end of the ricasso is 2 1/4 inches. Now the material is a mild steel and has that matching blued black finish of the blade. And then again, the style of hilt is specifically a Italian 3-ring full hilt. So the handle's total length is 3 inches. Its circumference at the guard is 2 3/4 inch, and that tapers slightly to 2.5 inches. The handle material is wood, and the grip material is a blackened, twisted wire that does feature Turk's heads at the ends. Now the pommel's total length is 2.5 inches. The pommel circumference at its widest is 5 1/4 inches, and its material, like the guard, is a mild steel with a matching blued or blackened finish. Now the hilt construction on this one, and this is kind of new to Windlass, honestly, is peened. So it has a nice peened pommel. And the pommel type is more of a octagonal globular, which is pretty common for rapier types to have these kind of more globular pommels, and they didn't really classify them. At least Oakshott didn't, and that's where most of my study of rapier comes from is Oakshott. But yeah, so it's to an extent an unclassified globular. Now moving on to the scabbard. So the scabbard feature with this sword is, kind of the standard Windlass leather scabbard that's paired with most of Windlass swords. It does feature a black throat and chape, and it does have these attractive flower embellishments, on the faces, on both the throat and chape. Now, honestly, unlike other swords in the Battlecry line, this one does not come with the usual leather frog that usually comes with them to kind of carry on a belt. Now, this was probably due to the fact that this scabbard, being a rapier scabbard, is just too thin for the basically, as far as I've seen with the Battlecry line, they have about 3 sizes of frogs that fit scabbards, and its smallest one is on dimension wise the same. I think it's used on their Agincourt as well as the Culloden basket hilt that I reviewed, and it's obviously still way too wide for this sword. So it's definitely probably just that's the case. So if you do want to carry this, you're going to have to get your own frog, or you probably already have one if you're a rapier guy or girl. So overall, it's kind of your usual Windlass leather scabbard. As far as its fit to the sword, It is, pretty loose, which is, kind of hit or miss with these windlass leather scabbards. A little bit on the flimsy side, so it's kind of more of that softer leather. Honestly, looking at it, and I noticed this when, I was kind of looking at the sword and comparing it to other rapier on Museum Replica's website. It does share the same furniture as the previous released, and it's been a continuation for quite a while, their 17th century Italian rapier. This rapier, as mentioned, is made by Windlass Steelcrafts, a well-known and respected sword manufacturer based in India. Now, this sword is a special part of a special line of windlass swords known as the Battlecry Line. Now, the Battlecry Line features swords specifically made for the rigors of cutting and practical use, with all featuring blued or darkened finishes to help with corrosion and maintenance of the sword. Now, there are quite a few swords and weapons featured in the Battlecry line, with two featured on this channel that I've previously reviewed, namely the Malden Viking sword and the discontinued Culloden Scottish basket hilt. Now, this sword overall has a nice fit and finish that complements the style and elegance of the 17th century rapier that it is focused on replicating. The blade is appropriately shaped and strongly tapers to a fine, sharp point. The cross section is diamond and features a very strong central ridge. Further down towards the hilt, the blade features a unsharpened and also historically accurate wasted ricasso. As with most rapier, the prime feature is of this sword type is the swept hilt, and in my opinion, this one doesn't disappoint. It is designed after the traditional three-ring Italian full hilt and matches that type very well. Now, the bars are well cast and swept, and they flow correctly without any abrupt edges or overly pronounced welding marks. Now, the quillions terminate appropriately, and they are flush, so they're not like bent or crooked. The knuckle guard flows to the pommel appropriately and is sizable for proper protection and handling. Now, really being neither too large nor too small for a hand, and again, it is blackened to match the theme of the Battlecry line. Now, overall, it's a very impressive swept hilt guard. The grip, moving on to the grip, is also nicely finished and really feels great in the hand in different, handling formations. So really nice, really comfortable, overall really nice handle. It's also has the benefit of being the appropriate length for the sword type, which is definitely a good thing in my opinion, as many modern rapier have oddly extra long handles, almost hand and a half. Now, it is finished, and I'll kind of move in and show you guys here, with a nice twisted thin millimeter blackened wire, and also has these nice and attractive Turk's heads at the ends. Now, with the pommel is globular in style, and again fits the overall aesthetic and function of the sword. Now, unlike most windlass rapier, which are threaded, this one has the benefit of being peened to the hilt. Now, in my opinion, this is a really nice addition that adds to definitely the sword's functionality and durability. Speaking of durability, this sword is built very well and is definitely focused on being a functional and working rapier. It is sharp and has a very fine edge, and though it is a beveled edge, which might not be to some's liking, it is well done and sharp through. The balance on this sword is great, and the rigidity of the blade is a definite improvement over most windlass blades, which can tend to be a little too whippy or flexible in some models. Now, the grip is comfortable to wield, and the ring guards are of appropriate shape to be fingered, gloved, or barehanded. You know, swinging this sword around is actually pretty effortless, and you know, changing stances and things is actually pretty nice with this one. So it's not too weighty, it's not too light, not too flippy, things like that. Changing kind of your grips is really nice and capable. So yeah, that is a benefit of it too. You know, this one is definitely very well balanced and a really well designed rapier. Now, overall, judging by this sword's fit and finish and general construction, I would feel completely competent using this sword as a regular use cutting and practice weapon. In my judgment, this sword would be adequate for medium to light cutting on medium to light targets, but I wouldn't really focus too much on real heavy target cutting, simply just to its very thin blade profile. On to thrusting. Thrusting exercises should be really a breeze with this sword's strong needle-like profile that ends in that very reinforced diamond tip. But again, I wouldn't try to beat it up too much with any destructive testing due to its general thin profile. In closing, I didn't really know what to think about this rapier when it first appeared on the market as a new arrival to MuseumReplicas.com. Now, as it is with most Battlecry Line swords, this sword is technically a mix of various windlass design swords mixed up, basically made to be unique and fresh to the Battlecry line. For example, this one uses the hilt parts and scabbard parts of their earlier released 17th century Italian rapier in their line of rapiers, but of course features a different profiled blade and actually a nicer and shorter grip. The other thing about this sword is, you know, really overall its updates and improvements are definitely better and much better than any other windlass rapier that I've seen or handled. As such, I definitely would highly recommend this sword for anyone looking for a historically accurate and well-built functional rapier in the sub $400 price point. I mean, with this one, I was honestly the most impressed I've been in a long time. If I could pick three top things that I would say about this sword is that its definite added rigidity is a huge plus. Its proper weight and balance is a huge plus. The general fit and finish to the hilt, everything's nice, tight, and in sync. The basket, again, is very well casted. There isn't like your usual welding marks and things you see on sub $400 or sub $500 rapier. And then, of course, the added benefit of the full peen as far as its hilt construction, which you rarely see on most any rapier. From, you know, basically to get a peened rapier, you're usually having to look at like the Del 10 models, which are around $600, or like the Arms and Armor models, which are well into the you know, $800 to $1,000. Well, with that, I guess I'll call it that for this review. I hope you enjoyed viewing it and it helps with your decision to purchase this sword or not purchase this sword. Be sure to like and subscribe, as well as look for future content from Dynamo Sword Channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.